welcome back to the Director's Garage. I am your host and resident idiot, Michael, and today, folks, we are doing a deep dive into the ZMF Caldera closed back edition. Basically, Zach took one of the best open back headphones on the market and figured out how to slap some tasty wood over the drivers without screwing up the sound too much.
Okay.
Well, Zach not only succeeded in his effort, he wound up making what I think is the best closed back headphone on the market, price no object, at least of everything I've heard. Yeah, this thing is that good. I've had a love affair with ZMF lately. This is a company that can't seem to make a bad product no matter how hard they try. And I believe that years from now, when we look back at this period, the story of ZMF will be hailed in the halls of Headphonia as one of the most consistent, impressive eras from a, by then, legendary brand. Think about it. The Atrium, the Caldera, the Bouquet, the Atrium closed, the Aegis, the Caldera closed. ZMF is on a run of successes we've never before seen in this hobby. Each headphone brings something unique to the table without stepping on the validity of its brother and sister products. This ain't easy to do, folks. This is a rare achievement, and for that, we should all celebrate ZMF.
Check out the ergonomics.
Now I'm going to start today with ergonomics because that's kind of what we do around here, guys. And well, this is indeed a ZMF product, which is to say, you know, you're in for that handcrafted experience. These things are fine art, kind of like a Picasso, maybe a little less abstract. But the Caldera closed has a great weight to it. They're not too heavy, not too light. Excellent hardware. You gotta love that. And I love the styling. I love the shape of these new cups. Zach and his team took a sander to these things, and the traditional round cup is gone, whacking out chunks of wood to create a bit more style and sophistication.
Thank you.
So where do these things fall a little short? Well, I'm not a great fan of this particular wood. I've seen these done in more attractive materials, and frankly, I'd spend a little extra cash to get a little more bling out of these things. Now, one other note is that these things wear a little close on the ear compared to my other headphones, including the Caldera open back, and that may take some getting used to. It makes contact with the outside of my Dumbo ears, especially with my pad of choice. So let's talk about these pads. Now with the suede pad, the Caldera comes across maybe a little bit on the bright side and a touch too lean down low. The lambskin though, well, that gave this headphone a little more balance and it kind of dumbed down that brightness a bit. The lambskin pulls them back a little bit on the top end and gives you a little more sub down low, and that's why I preferred them.
Kings and queens, and in between. Can't tell me this headphone's image.
So let's start breaking down the sound of this Caldera closed, and I'm gonna start with imaging because the instruments come from a specific place in the stage, just like its big brother, the Caldera open back, and I love that. I'm not sure how Zach is pulling this off, but I love hearing little surprises around this headphone when the music serves up some delightful little ticks and cymbal hits off to the side. There are more surprises here than a Taylor Swift concert, and I think the imaging is the second best property of this headphone. So then what's the most impressive, right? Well, for me, it's got to be dynamics. Boom, boom, boom. Ow. Well, first you have one of the fastest planar magnetic headphones available. This thing goes from quiet to loud faster than Wile E. Coyote through a wall. And to top that off, you get gobs and gobs of beastly slam. These things are just a sensation in the dynamic department.
The devil is in the detail.
Now, the praise continues when you get to detail, because the planers inside these cups, folks, they're wicked fast. They're very reactive, and you get to peer into the music when there's this much detail coming through. The OG Sysfara is about the only other headphone, maybe the Yamaha 2, that'll give you a greater abundance of detail if you're looking for that. But this Caldera provides that excellence without the need for a ton of power, thanks to this headphone's efficiency. The only knock that I'd have in this area is that the Caldera closed requires that you bring your best tracks. You gotta leave those MP3s at home, folks, or you're gonna feel cheated if you play them through this thing. This is the opposite of the Atrium. With the Caldera closed, you're gonna hear any issue in the mix, whatever you're listening to.
Soundstage appears before my ears.
Now, one area of the sound properties that doesn't make much of an impression on me is the sound stage. The stage on this headphone is slimmer than Oprah on Ozempic, which is to say they aren't the widest thing I've heard. Fairly narrow, in fact. They stay close in on the head sonically. Now, it's tempting to say, well, that's just kind of the nature of a closed-back headphone, but when I was auditioning and reviewing the Dan Clark Audio E3, I got a massive stage out of that closed back, and you realize how spoiled you kind of are with that headphone. But there is the issue of the E3 requiring a whole heap of power to get them to perform. The Caldera takes any amp, any size, it just does what it do with very little effort. But the stage, yeah, it's fairly tight around your head on this thing. You're not going to be hearing echoes rebounding far off into distant places.
I'm lost without sound structure. Ain't no basses, no trebles or mids.
So we're off to a great start, but how will this Caldera closed fare when it comes to sound structure? We're talking bass and mids and treble, and today we'll do it in that order. And we're starting with the bass, because the Caldera closed, folks, has bass for days. Deep presence way down into the sub, and this headphone thumps into slam on any amp that I threw in front of it. Very, very efficient headphone, and that factors in later when we talk about value. But for now, just know that with the right track, like one of the viewer recommendations, Afternoon in Stereo, you'd swear there was a lowrider passing by with a trunk full of subwoofers. These things shake, rattle, and roll with bass in the same line as some of the best dynamic driver headphones. The bass is thick and it's detailed with tremendous extension, absolute top grade. Now, if there's any weakness in the Caldera closeback other than the soundstage, to me, it's the mids. And I don't mean to imply that the mids are lacking in any way. I just mean compared to the other ends of the spectrum, the mids don't distinguish themselves from the mix the way the treble and the bass do. There's a slight laid-back quality to them that makes them pleasant, but not particularly grabby. I suppose if they were pushed forward anymore, you'd upset the delicate balance that makes this headphone special. And that, of course, leaves treble. It's crazy clear. I don't know, guys. This thing's crazy clear. There's excellent extension here. The highs are accentuated, and you kind of get the feeling that this thing's a little on the bright side. The treble does pop through the mix, but it's not with the same authority as the bass end of the spectrum. This thing is definitely bass first. This thing's a top-tier headphone for treble. It's probably a tick below the Sysfara, but it's actually in line with the Caldera Openback. Speaking of which, hey, let's compare these two.
We're having a shootout.
The Caldera Openback against the closed. Okay, guys, this really is the Clash of the Titans, isn't it? And the obvious thing is that the imaging and the stage are going to go right out to the Openback. That should surprise no one. There's just more space for things to happen in this headphone, and the stage on the Caldera closed is, as I said, fairly narrow, at least to my ears. Now, the Openback sounded a little brighter to me, but then I did that ZMF Titan mod that we did on the live stream, and you do remember that we live streamed stream, right, every week? Well, these two got a whole lot closer. That mod shaves off all the peakiness in the upper mids on the open back. Now, when I did the sound impression, I thought that the Caldera closed sounded a bit livelier to me than I remembered the Caldera open back being. But on direct A-B comparison, when I did the review, the open back actually had a little punchier bass. And I think the reason I reacted as I did was because I had been trying out a suede pad on the Caldera open back for a few months, and when I swapped back to the lambskin, the Caldera open back was back to its old self. I consider the Caldera open back to be one of the finest headphones in the world, and after swapping back and forth between this and the Caldera closed, I'm gonna double down. The open back gets the win. Now, we can't talk about the Caldera closeback without bringing up the Dan Clark Audio E3. That's really the fairest comparison we could make. They're both closeback headphones, and I raved about the E3, but after spending time with this Caldera closed, this is an easy choice for me in favor of the ZMF. To start with, the Caldera closed is much easier to drive. Both headphones are tuned a little bit peaky in the upper mids, but the Caldera pulls it back a bit where the E3 can jump into shouty on the wrong track. The Caldera, though, it's bright itself, it just plays it a little bit safer, I feel. The E3 is wide open on the top end. It's the Wild West. The Caldera, to me, sounds more refined. The Caldera has a faster, punchier bottom end, and the Caldera has the better dynamics, speed, image, all sharper. Now, the E3 does have some advantages, in my opinion. I hear a decidedly grand soundstage on the E3, and they are definitely more comfortable, and they do that cool foldy trick. You can't do that with these. Come on, Zach. Okay. But I really do generally prefer the Caldera closed. Personally, if I were in the market, I would save up and go for the Caldera. It's the best sounding closed back in my opinion, and I think it's worth that extra money. Yeah, let's drill down on that value proposition, because if you already have the amplification, the E3 is by far the better buy. We're talking just $2,000. It's an easy recommendation. That's why I recommended the headphone. But you gotta factor in that that headphone doesn't perform as well with just a generic $1,000 amp. The Caldera closed lights up with any amp I tested. So if I'm forced to decide between the E3 or the Caldera closed, well, I'm going to prefer the ZMF because you can drive it with anything. And then you add up the cost of the E3 and a good amplifier, these two get a lot closer in price. Now, throwing value out the window, just focusing on sound, the Caldera closed is a fairly easy call for me. It's also more attractive by a long shot, and you get that handcrafted effect of the solid wood exterior, though they're not as comfy as the E3. So let's start wrapping this all up and bringing it home, folks, because the Caldera closed is another winner from ZMF. There's no question there. And if I were looking for a closed-back headphone, yeah, this is the one I'd choose, even if the E3 might appear to be a little better value. This Caldera closed-back is the best closed-back headphone I've heard for pure sound. I consider this the king of the closed-backs, at least for now. So that's the ZMF Caldera closed-back headphone, a $3,500 wonder of a headphone. These things are a joy to listen to. But I don't think I'm going to be throwing my own money down to pick up a pair. First of all, I'm completely in the throes of a financial crisis with the layoff. You can check out my live stream announcement if you want the bloody details. But even if I had the cash, which I clearly don't, given that I have this massive space all to myself, I don't really have a need for a high-end closed-back headphone in my lineup. Sound isolation just isn't an issue for me. And if I wouldn't contemplate taking these things on the road with me, these things are just a little too nice and a bit too much for travel purposes.
Yo, boy, What's on the show mix?
Now, before I go, I gotta thank Zach and the fine folks at ZMF for sending the Caldera closed my way. I'll be sending these back to you guys, but I really do love this headphone. And if you're looking for the best closed back, this is the best I've heard to date. Now, there's so much more ahead, guys. On the next episode, we've got an epic unboxing. Something said to me thanks to the work of Mod House mogul Ryan Dietz. Oh, you won't see this one coming, guys.
Please.
I can't wait. Plus, I have another unboxing. It's unboxing season suddenly. Something from Audio 46. It's a mystery box that keeps getting bumped because I keep getting all these special products sent to me. Just make sure you...
Like, and subscribe to the Director's Garage.
Yeah, so much ahead, guys. Give this episode a thumbs up if you enjoyed my review of the Caldera closeback, or you can do the other thing if you think I'm a complete ninny.
Killing me.
I just like saying ninny. I can't say I blame you either way, but I'll see you guys before you know it.